Hey, what's up? Justin here, welcome to 65 Drums. Today I'm giving my first thoughts on the 2box Drummit 3 module and also the 2box Drumset. Keep your eyes out for tomorrow's video where I'm going to talk about the 2box triggers and then of course their flagship drum module, the 2box Drummit 5 Model 2 that just came out. It's just too much stuff to talk about, the drum set, 2 modules, and a trigger system. I thought it would be better to split it into 2 separate videos. Let's talk about pricing first. If you want to buy the 2box Drummit 3 module by itself, it's selling for about $900. If you want to buy it with the drum set that I played right here, it costs about $2,200. I feel like the best case scenario for the 2box Drummit 3 is to buy as an upgrade to a kit you already have. That way you can add more pads, have more sonic options, and just basically breathe new life into your older electronic drum set. So for example, maybe you have an older Roland TD9, a TD8. You can only push those drum modules so far. You could buy a 2box Drummit 3 module, or of course their brand new version of the 2box Drummit 5. That's what I feel like they were really pushing when I was at the 2box booth. And of course they do sell their drum set as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. Now jumping over to the specs for a second, I'm just going to throw them on screen. If you're thinking about buying this drum module, you're probably either an advanced or at least an intermediate electronic drum user. I wouldn't really recommend buying this as your first foray into the electronic drum landscape. First of all, unlike other drum modules around this price range, it doesn't have a cable snake, thank God. It has 15 universal trigger inputs. So you can plug in Yamaha pads, you can plug in Roland pads, you can plug in Elisa's pads. And if you dive into the drum module, they show you exactly what you need to do to set up whatever company's pad you're plugging into the module. And I would highly recommend reading the manual with this thing because you can only get so far bumping around and trying to figure things out for yourself. This is one of those kind of drum modules where you'll need to either read a manual or watch some tutorials. As you'll also see from the specs, it's got 4 GB of internal sound memory. So if you want to import multi-layered samples, you're completely free to do that, as long as you don't go over that 4 GB cap. So if you're gonna like put in really nice kits, you have around, I don't know, like 3 or 4 kits. But I don't want to generalize too much though, because sometimes in VSTs that I have, the kits are only like 1/3 of a gigabyte, 1/2 of a gigabyte. So it just depends on how big of a kit you want to load in. Now, of course, I have to cover my butt here and say that the terms and conditions of every program that you have vary. So actually read those before you click the I agree box. You may or may not be legally allowed to rip those samples from your laptop and put them into this box. So I don't want to tell you to go do something illegal. Actually read the user agreement for your individual program before doing anything. Just looking at the specs by themselves just tells you that this is an open box. You can plug in whatever kind of pads you want and you can put in whatever kind of sounds you want. The drum module isn't very flashy, it just exists to do whatever you want it to do. So on the good side, I love that it's a really flexible drum module. You can plug in whatever pad you want and any sound can be imported into it. I also like that it's selling for a fair price. Some people might think $900 is kind of pricey, but for the things this drum module can do, that is a fair price for what they're charging. I also like the fact that it has 4 outputs and you can route whatever you want to any of those outputs. That's a very powerful feature and a lot of drum modules just don't have that as a feature at all. And the last thing that I really like about the drum module is that you're not stuck with the internal sounds. They actually have a website where they have tons of free kick drums, free snares, free cymbals, all these different sounds. You can download them and port them onto the kit as long as you don't go over that 4 GB limit. And now you have all these free sounds. Other companies, they charge for downloading an extra ride cymbal from their company website, an extra kick drum. This company doesn't. And they're actually still adding more sounds to the website all the time. If I just had to rely on the internal sounds inside of this drum module, I wouldn't be so sure about it. So as you can see, the drum module has a lot going for it. The only downside is it doesn't have some of the things that make life a little bit easier. For example, I wish it had like a 2-inch color screen. I don't need some sort of giant touch screen. You can't afford to put that in a $900 drum module, but even something the size of the screen on the Elisa Strike would have been very useful, would have made life a little bit easier, would have made the manual less necessary. I wish there were individual faders. That is a thing on drum modules around this price range. If you take a look at the Elisa Strike, they have faders. If you take a look at like the DTX 700 series, it has faders as well. I don't need faders for every single instrument, but even groupings like 1 fader for the toms, 1 fader for the cymbals, kick and snare. That's really all you need. Another little feature that might not bother some people, but it's a big deal to me, is the fact that this just has 1 master volume knob. So I can't control the headphones and the master volume independently really quickly with, dedicated knobs. I'm sure you can do that inside of the drum module, but it makes life simpler when you have a headphone volume knob, a master out volume knob, and then of course like an aux-in volume knob for when you want to plug in your phone. You can get to all those settings within the drum module, but it takes a little bit longer. So for example, when I was doing the recording, I had to set the volume of the entire drum module to benefit my audio recorder and not my actual headphones. I wanted the headphone volume to be up a little bit, but so that I wouldn't overblow all the recordings, I ended up turning it a little bit down. I apologize if any of the audio doesn't sound quite perfect. I ended up still leaving the volume a little bit too high, blowing out some of the recordings, but I did the best I could. I was recording a lot of different drum sets that day. And then one other quick thing I want to mention before we jump ahead to some sound examples. To my ear, it felt like there weren't enough all-purpose rock kits that work well with just any situation, hard-hitting hi-hats, kicks, snare that are just big, fat, and punchy. There was a lot of kits that were good for very specific situations, certain kinds of songs, but not enough all-purpose sounding kits. But don't take that to heart too much though, because you can just download more free sounds from the website or get them from whatever source you want, because you can import your own samples into this thing. The whole point of this drum module seems to be mass compatibility and importing sounds. So criticizing the internal sound seems kind of pointless because they want you to import external sounds anyway. We're going to jump ahead to some playing examples and of course my quick little mini review of the drum set itself. Now, one thing that I've noticed after playing a lot of different electronic drum sets is that every company seems to have their own unique sound. ATV drum modules all have a certain sound. Roland drum modules, no matter what tier they are, they all have that little Roland sound to them. And 2box definitely has a sound of their own as well. I think it's just the way that they mix, EQ, and master their overall sounds before they put them inside of the drum module. I kind of have some mixed feelings about these sounds. I feel like you're playing the exact same couple of kits over and over again, but in a bunch of different room types, or with a couple of different kinds of effects on those sounds. With the internal sound bank, there's a lot of good kits for very specific kinds of songs and genres, but there's not many like all-purpose rock kits, all-purpose pop kits that can just be used with everything. And that's what I'm always looking for when I'm trying to play drum sets in a drum module. I want something that just sounds really punchy, really big, and will sound good in any kind of environment. But the problem is, this drum module isn't really trying to compete with a Pearl Mimic or an Elisa Strike. This whole thing is set up so that you download external sounds and put it into the drum module itself. They're really putting the burden on you to find the sounds you want and put them into the drum module. And it's for this very reason that I don't think this is a good beginner electronic drum module. This is for intermediate and expert users that are very picky about their sounds. They know the sounds they want and they just want a drum module that can house those sounds. So if you're that kind of guy, you've already got the samples you want from some other source, and you just want a box to play those sounds and not have to mess with an external laptop, this might be the drum module for you. If I was going to go out and buy a drum module today, this 2box Drummit 3 module doesn't really line up with my specific needs of what I want out of a drum module. I highly favor drum faders, individual volume knobs, and having good sounds internally that I don't have to worry about importing external samples. But again, this is really made for a specific kind of electronic drummer. But of course, mentioning the website again, I haven't listened to all those sounds. So you really need to listen to all the sounds on the website before you decide whether or not this drum module is or isn't for you. One other thing that I really want to mention is the fact that they do have round robin samples. They do have quite a few different sample layers per zone. So the guy told me that there's like usually 100 layers for each snare, and they usually have around 50 layers for the toms. Some of the cymbal sounds, if you really play them individually, they're really nice sounding. I wasn't as big of a fan of like the kick, snare, and tom sounds, but I feel like some of those cymbal samples are very, very nice. So those are my overall thoughts on the 2box Drummit 3 module. It is a very good drum module for what it does, and I feel like it fills a specific need in the electronic drum community, so I'm glad they've made it. Moving over to the drum set, here's some really quick first impressions of that kit. You can spot this drum set from a mile away. It's the only electronic drum set currently being sold by any major company that uses a bright orange color scheme. Now, of course, that's their brand color, and that's why they went with it. I'm more of like a black pad kind of guy. You can always repaint it. I know that a lot of people have bought 2box drum sets, and they've actually posted photos of themselves changing it to a dark blue or black. You can paint it very easily. It's just the pad itself. As you can see when you're looking at this drum set, the sensor actually sits on top of the drum pad. If you buy this drum set, the first thing that I would do is switch out the drum heads to something that's like 2-ply or 3-ply. The drum set I was using had Tama 1-ply pads on top of it, basically Remo Silent Strokes with a different name on them. Very bouncy. When you switch over to 2-ply mesh heads, your accuracy is going to go up and it's going to feel more natural. This thing has a very, very nice sturdy drum rack. Be careful though, because sometimes you'll buy the set and it won't come with the drum rack. So read the description carefully on the website that you buy. If you see it for like $300 off, that's probably because it doesn't come with the drum rack. So jumping over to the cymbals, I would say they're on the caliber of like Elisa cymbals. Not quite as good as Roland, Yamaha, or ATV. The ride and the crash responded fine. I actually enjoyed the texture of rubber on these cymbals. They had a nice playing feel to them. The hi-hat wasn't quite dialed in as well as I would like. It's very hard to create and build a hi-hat on an acoustic hi-hat stand that responds naturally. Only a couple of companies have nailed it, and with the settings I was using, it wasn't perfect on every kit that I played, so just keep that in mind. So overall, the drum set, I was a little bit 50-50 on. I wouldn't say it was a bad kit, and I wouldn't say it was an amazing kit. I was just kind of like, it was okay. But of course, 2box isn't forcing you to buy the drum set. They just have it as an option in case you want to buy it and just have the whole thing up and running right away. Again, I feel like the best case scenario for the 2box Drummit 3 is to buy as an upgrade to a kit you already have. That way you can add more pads, have more sonic options, and just basically breathe new life into your older electronic drum set. The 2box Drummit 3 is basically a box that lets you do whatever you want. It's got a very specific audience in the electronic drum market. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in a few.